I would ask the audience a question of, how is the way that people who use drugs depicted in Love in the Time of Fentanyl different from the way that you normally see people who use drugs depicted in media or in conversation, even between you and the people that you know? And Sarah, I guess I'd like to ask you, when you saw this film, the the same question, what do you think is different about the way that those people in your community are portrayed versus the way they are seen by people who pass through the downtown east side?
Well, when we first, I knew Colin, who made the film, for quite a few years beforehand, and I'd worked at a homeless shelter, and he had worked in the downtown east side at Insight and different places in the downtown east side. So we knew each other for doing frontline work and working in a grassroots way. And we actually went to the Homeless World Cup, which is soccer teams from around the world that are homeless that play against each other together to support a team from Canada. And so we got to know each other. So I had a friendship and a trust with him, and I knew that he understood, how important this was to do properly and to involve people from the community. Involve, like, for the community, by the community. So the film operators were people from the community. People that were helping with the interviews were for the community. Some of the ideas came from the community, and the song came from the community. And so a lot of input was put into a collaboration for the community, showing themselves in the way that they felt respected, but also was a part of. And it took a lot of work to make that happen. And so in the end, it was something that came out that we were all proud of and felt like we were part of, and the people from ops, and felt comfortable with what we brought forward. So it was good in that way. And it takes a lot to do it in a sensitive way. It's a lot more work than just coming down and filming for a few hours and leaving. And so a lot of sensitivity was involved in making the film, and a lot of understanding of the issues that people face, and compassionate. Otherwise, I really didn't want to do it at first. I thought, well, oh my God, it's enough that we do news segments that are like 3 minutes long, let alone having people running around with cameras everywhere. God knows, like, how you could be portrayed in a different way than, or how are going to people react to it, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I really appreciate you describing the process of making the film with Colin. I think there's a term in healthcare providers, duty of care, and it's a term that Story Money Impact uses a lot. And the duty of care that a filmmaker has to not extract a story from that community, and the way that community was not just invited to create the film, but invited to like to create the film and be a part of the film, and have who they are inform the making of the film rather than having that view imposed on them. And you mentioned news segments, and I do want to ask you about how the making of the film really differs from some of the news segments that you've been a part of in the past.
Yeah, I mean, so like, there's the journalists that we work with in Vancouver are very ethical and understanding. And so and it's, I mean, there's a lot of stories about the overdose crisis that happen. So we have relationships with the newspapers and the news to try and get out the word about what's happening. And sometimes dramatic stories come out. And we've had a lot of people, like bloggers, come through with riding their bikes and filming people, or students filming people. So there is always like an ethical, a conversation around ethics around filming people in a vulnerable situation when they're homeless, or so I mean, this process, in order to make a longer segment, more than a few minutes, like it takes a lot of it takes a lot of trust. You have to have a lot of trust. The trust is built over time. Showing people the film, showing them again the film, changing the film, making sure that it reflects what people, how the reality is of what we're facing every day, without being, dramatizing it too much, but also like showing the real reality of things and having people feel comfortable, like with Dana um, when he was like he had the needle in his neck. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty dramatic scene, and it takes, like, I think to him, I don't want to speak for him or anything, but I think like showing the reality of like the human being, and the person who uses drugs, and that and Dana is such a beautiful person, and that uses drugs too, and it doesn't define a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it shows that you can learn to have compassion. Like, this film is actually, we've shown people from all political stripes this film, and it's really changed some people's point of views, like, absolutely completely by the end of it. Just that they got to know people, and they've always had some fear or not understanding, or didn't understand what choices people would make, or this or that. And I think that the film really gets into explaining who people are and how they end up in using drugs and using overdose prevention sites, and how we're all just human beings, and we have to care about each other and be understanding and compassionate for everyone. And yeah, so I think it does a really good job at it, especially since when you see the reaction from people who are even more conservative, that look at it, and then they say, oh, I've never really thought about things this way. I've never really considered people this way, and or
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what I mean? So people that
Yeah.
are just from a upper class community, who go to high school, they go to college, they go to university, they don't understand, like, and this gives a window into like what people are really like, and that it may not be what you think. And yeah.
I think that's the beauty of this film, especially done in this cinema verite style, where it's observing just what is real. There isn't really a voiceover, except in very brief segments, about the character, the protagonists themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it rips the veil of our prejudices away, and it shows, as you say, the human being that's there, and like all their sensitivities. They're nerdy. Like, I love the conversation between Dana and the other community member about Star Wars, because like life goes on, life is complex. There's all these beautiful things,
Yeah.
and I wanted to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
The film centers the humanity of these people. And there's a term that's being tossed around a lot in harm reduction circles and in healthcare circles right now: person-centered care. Like, what does that really mean? Because this film does a great job at centering the personhood of these people who are the target of a lot of biases in society.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it mean to perform person-centered care?
I think meeting people where they're at, and a person comes to you, they're maybe been out in the alley or in the alley alone for a long time, and have had nowhere to go, where they're not accepted for themselves and accepted as a human being, because they're a drug user, and then they come to a place like the overdose prevention site, where there's people that are accepted, even if they use drugs, and people understand them, and they ask for, they need a job. We hire people right from the street. They need housing, we help them with that. We work alongside people and work with people that are former. We only hire former drug users or drug users for all of our staff and positions, so to run our site. And it's mainly because we want people have the most empathy, that have been through the similar situations. So if you've lived on the sidewalk and you've had to struggle, and you haven't been able to take a shower or get your hair cut, or any of those things for a really long time, as a drug user yourself, and if you're sober now, you have a lot of understanding and deep compassion, whereas other people may not. Also, giving opportunities to people that are drug users while they are drug users helps them get in a pattern of working and expectations and expectations that people can meet, um, meet their own, like, that you're expected to be here at this certain time, beyond time, and we have expectations because you're a meaningful person and you are a good contributor to society, and people exceed their expectations, and a lot of people get better through that. People get better. I mean, it's still, no matter what, it's very difficult. Like, as nice and wonderful as everything seems, we're still saving lives. So it's a very challenging situation, and it's an emergency situation. And what we do is very serious. But I mean, we have haircuts, we have counselors that come by, we have doctors that come by, we have, massage therapy, we have training so that people are trained in, de-escalation, safer drug use, all kinds of different training, and which, getting certificates and things like that helps people when they want to get out and get a job. But, we help people get rid of their criminal charges, and like written letters to help them get through things, and helping them get housing and into detox on demand. So there's just like meeting people where they are at, and person-centered care is based on like where they are at in their life and helping them with that, I guess.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And I think that's the big piece that I want everyone who's watching this either live right now or as part of the recording to take away. That person-centered care, or meeting people where they're at, is that when people who use drugs are in this very vulnerable position, when they express a need, you meet that need, whatever it is, because there is this complex intersection of so many different issues that contribute to keeping people in that place. And I want to return to this topic about, all these various services you provide at OPS. But there's some questions here around decriminalization. And I want to ask you, how do you feel about that approach in BC, whether it has had a positive impact, and if you think the rest of Canada should follow in decrim?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously fairly controversial. My personal opinion is, I mean, it's part of a bigger picture. We need a lot of different things. We need, if I had it exactly how I'd like to see it at the Overdose Prevention site, we would have easy access to detox on demand, which we're actually working on. We're getting closer to it than we ever have. We've been able to get people in the same day, which is really great. So we're working with the authorities to make sure that a person comes into ops, they say, I want to get a detox, we can get them in right away. Decriminalization helps with some stigmatizing and making it that it's not a criminal offense to have personal possession on you. It's a small part of many things that we need to do. So it's not, if people look at it and say, well, that's, you've decriminalized, that should have been the solution. There's many different things that need to be done in order to make a bigger impact. If we had what we wanted, people would come in off the street and they would get a drug that they were going to use in a medical way, and they were able to use something they knew what it was and how much they were using, and that we could work around that. A lot of people come in, they have mental health issues or pain management issues, and some people want to get off drugs eventually, and some people just can't, and they won't, just for a variety of reasons. Some people want to get on another, they don't know, they want to try a few things like Sublocade or methadone or different things over time. Each person is so individual in what their needs are, what they want now, and what they'd like to do. What their dreams and their goals are, their personal dreams and goals are in life. And so it's a matter of trying to figure out what those personal dreams and goals are, and trying to help them achieve, housing and some of the short-term stuff. And I mean, it's all very difficult because there isn't enough housing, and there's a lot of things that need to be put in place. So yeah, I think some people say, you know, decriminalization made things worse or they didn't do enough. But I mean, if you don't have, you know, housing and you don't have a lot of things, some of these things make small changes, but they're not big enough to have a big impact on the bigger picture. So, you know, you need to have housing for everyone. Decriminalization with not housing for everyone, then, you know, it's like, it's still a challenging situation. And I think poverty is a big deal that, you know, when people are living outside in the cold and the rain, I mean, most people would use drugs. There's just no way you could get through some of the nights, and more people are homeless, right? So, I mean, you even look at Pierre Poliver video the other day he put out, and it showed, you know, students living under bridges and nurses living in vans, and that's not a healthy situation for people. So we need to get to a better place where people are living in housing, and that's that. I mean, actually living in housing and having a shower and having a toilet of your own, and you know, I've seen people move in off the street and get some of these things after not having them for years, and it's just like, you know, it's an unbelievable thing. So how happy people are just to get basic services. So yeah.
I really love that answer, Sarah, especially to a question about decriminalization, because I see this instinct that you have to just always just return to what people need. And I think
Yeah.
I think that's really illuminating this term I keep using, person-centered care, is what you're exemplifying by just like, well, what do people need? Do people need decriminalization? Decriminalization addresses just this part of the issue, but people
Yeah.
need a place to live.
Yeah.
People need a place to shower. People need to like feel like they're to be treated with dignity.
Yeah.
And those are part of the activities of OPS, because it's not just you're going out into the street and saving people who are overdosing, but you also, as you say, provide hairstyling, food, counseling. And I'd love for you to talk about the day-to-day
Pet
operations.
food. We have a big pet
Pet
food
food.
program.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
huge.
you know, people who have pets and animals, when they're in distress, they're in distress. You know, it's just, so we try to figure out what people are in need of and try to find out ways. Can we get donations? Can we work with, you know, the SPCA or local food banks for animals, and try and meet people where they're at in terms of what their needs are, and try and make their lives a bit better. And so if they do want to go to detox, or they want to, you know, whatever they want to do in their life, that it's the better version of, you know, what they're living in an alley alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got something unique to offer, as you can see in that video. Like it's a family, and you know, if we don't celebrate people's birthdays, or we don't have like a Christmas dinner, people, or even have a Halloween party, you know, we have a, you know, we make the best of it, and it is a family. And we, you know, we're doing our best to make the best of it in really tough times, for sure.
Absolutely. To me, and I hope to the audience, it seems clear that offering this range of services that meet people where they're at also serve to bring people in to access the core services, which is a supervised consumption site. And I wanted to ask you, the way that you offer your services, do you think that this should be the model for public health services across the country?
Yeah, yeah. I think having a place that's a way to get people off the street into a place like overdose prevention site, with services. I mean, one could say that we just need more. We need more support for things like safe supply, because buying drugs off the street is not ideal for anyone, and it puts people in a risky situation. And I think the more we can eliminate that, and we still have a ways to go. But we're, I think as long as we continue to try and educate people through this film and through other means, that people get to know what we do and what we want to do, and because of, sometimes because of stigma, everything just goes so slow, right? Like things go slower than you want to in terms of like getting the solutions that you need, and sometimes like you take 5 steps backwards, like in some of the politics that are happening right now. I feel like there's like a lot of criticism around what harm reduction has or hasn't done, and what decriminalization has or hasn't done, and we just haven't done enough generally. So it's hard to criticize something where we haven't really gone full in to try and solve it.
Yeah.
So it's not really to the fault of the harm reduction that it's not completely able to solve the crisis. We need to do more work to create more opportunities and services like detox on demand, like long-term recovery, like alternatives to the street drugs, on site, so people aren't having to put themselves in a harm's way by buying them off the street. All of those kinds of things we just have to work. We do it in as much grassroots ways as we can, but we also have to show what we're doing so that people have a good understanding that we're doing our best under tough circumstances.
Yeah. I have so many follow-up questions to the deep answer that you just gave. I'm going to go through them in order. The first, I think, is you did mention a safe drug supply. You talked about how undependable and unsafe it can be to acquire drugs on the street, and that directly ties into a question from the audience here about how can the government help with safe supply? Do you have any suggestions for how the government can support safer supply?
Yeah, I mean, like ideally you have a place like the Overdose Prevention Site, and on site you have the options of things that people take in a dose, that they know what they're taking, that like they know what they're getting. Right now they don't know what they're getting. It's just a horrendous mix of like all kinds of crazy stuff. When we've tested it, it's always coming back as just absurd drugs that people are taking, and it's surprising sometimes that more people aren't dying. But so just knowing what you're taking is really important, and a lot of the drugs are like benzodiazepine and fentanyl. They're drugs that are prescribable, so just getting prescriptions, and whether it be someone witnesses people taking it on site, and or whatever method would that we could come to terms with something that was doable, would probably be one of the best solutions. It's just you come into the site, you go and you get the drug from someone who knows what it is, then you sit down and use it, and then make sure that that's safe, and then you leave. And the less overdoses, less infections, less overdoses that are totally unexplained, less risk in dealing with like street situations, like gang members and owing money, or all of those things that are safety related issues, and more working on the access to detox, and detox on demand is really important too. So yeah, I mean, like
So the answer to this audience member's question is to provide a safe supply. Like that's really the one job. For those of you who may not be familiar with the term, a safe supply is just exactly what Sarah just described: a regulated, tested, prescribed medications that are an alternative to the unregulated drug supply that is on the street, that is often toxic, especially in this crisis.
And I think, I think that like what we have, people say, well, safe supply doesn't work. Some people say that, but we haven't got a diverse enough options for safe supply for it to really be effective, because people take different things. So
Right.
we need more diversity in the safe supply for it actually to be effective.
Now, Sarah, there are some people who say safe supply don't work. And then there are some
Yeah.
people who are simply scandalized by the idea that taxpayers should pay money to give drugs to people who are addicted to drugs. This is not my stance, but it's part of the vitriolic prejudices that a lot of people in Canadian society express. What's your response to that?
I mean, I'm trying to think of it even from like a fiscal standpoint, and people not overdosing, not having firefighters and ambulances coming, bringing them to the hospital, or, reviving people over and over again, or people in the alleys or in their houses overdosing and then having brain damage and all of those things. Having a safe supply at an overdose prevention site where, people know what they're taking, they know how much they're taking, they won't have the infections, they won't have the long-term issues. It's easier to deal with something, what it is. If you have a safe supply of something, if you ever want to come off of it, you'll know how much you're taking to be able to taper off of it onto something else. You can add other medications to it. You can deal with some of the psychiatric issues. You can deal with some of the pain management issues. I mean, there's a lot more you can do to help people, and I would suggest that it's way, extremely much more affordable or cost effective, to stop this crisis than to have it go on as it is.
Yeah.
So having this crisis go on as it is going to be the most expensive thing that we could possibly do. So I think that if we're talking just fiscally, whether it's going to be cost too much to give people a safe supply or a supply of drugs that's not going to kill them, that we're going to know what they're going to take, they're going to have less infections and less issues. I think if we can find a way to do that, that everybody feels, that people feel, they may not feel 100% great about, but it's good, they feel that that it's something that's going to work, then I think that's really the solution, and for the long term. And there's things that are popping up that work, like Sublocade and things that maybe people haven't even tried. So I think just getting people into medical health care or introducing them to different things that they may have never tried that might actually be helpful for them. It's just like anything else, if they may not know what's helpful. So making sure they're introduced to things that might be helpful for them. I've seen people that use speed go on to Wellbutrin, and I've seen people get on methadone, and that works for them. I've seen people use different kinds of drugs, and so I just think trying to figure out what works for people, but yeah, it's being out of a crisis is much more affordable to the public than being in the middle of a crisis with nonstop ambulances.
Yeah, a very long
in the hospital
crisis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah, for that really powerful fiscal argument, in addition to the moral argument that you've previously made and the film makes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like to make it like that, but I mean, to some people it is that. It's exactly that. They're like, I don't want to spend taxpayers' money. They don't care. There's just so much stigma. They just don't care. Some people don't care. They just don't want to spend their tax money on people for whatever reason. But I also think that there's definitely, for those people, I don't agree with them. I'm very compassionate for people and understanding, and I wish they were too, but if they're not, then they also need to know that if we can solve the crisis through some of these important steps that we haven't done enough of, then we would be able to, it would be better for everybody, really.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. I think that's a good lead-in for my second follow-up question to when we were talking earlier about the services that OPS provides and implementing and scaling them to a higher level, which is, if OPS is as effective as we see it to be, and it is scalable, why are they not being offered at public health services across the country? Why is this crisis not being addressed on the level that it is, that it should be? Like, what are the challenges? Like, what's happening is the question.
Yeah. No, I know it's it's challenging times. Politics is changing, and there's a lot more homeless people, so there's an eye on it's politicizing some of the issues, which makes it more challenging to even get the things done that are needed to get done, because everything's an argument either way about, these people say, everybody goes to detox and put them in there and like lock them in there and put them on an island. Like that's where some people are at. And some and then you go all the way to like, free drugs for everyone all the time, and there has to, there's got to be some sort of middle ground where we can, and I think that the most effective thing is going to be somewhere in the middle where we can find some way to get people on a safe access to medication that's not going to kill them. And at the overdose prevention sites are a place where people can come in and feel comfortable, and that's not on the street, that's not alone, and we can start to be the frontline welcome center to people that are having a hard time, that we can get them into other services. And over time, we've been around for a while now, we've become more effective at doing that. At first, we really focused on just saving lives, and now we're more into focusing on like long-term stuff. So, and I think we have a lot we can teach people in different communities. I hope that we're able to teach people teach people what we've done. But again, like if people don't go far enough into what we need to do to make it happen, like that's when some of the more challenging issues come up. And people have some thoughts around safety issues and things like that, because we're still dealing with like an illegal drug market. So it's until we address that, there's going to be some of the more challenging issues around just drug dealing and things like that we need to get the drugs to the people that are not being given to them by people on the street, and that would be a big change. That it's hard when there's so much politicking going on, to actually get to that spot, right? And you don't want to fight too hard, because it's a worry that like you fight against the government, who you need to help and work with you, and how do you take it far enough that you're advocating enough that you're not upsetting the government, but you're advocating enough, showing that you're going to work with them, and you're showing what you're doing, and you're trying to save lives. And and there's so much stigma, and it's such a political issue, and people are caring less about, even though more people are becoming in poverty that used to, people are caring less, because like the housing prices and housing rates and everything are going up so high that a lot of people are themselves are living in extreme situations and don't have the compassion that they might have before. So and after COVID, it's definitely a recession, and so it's a hard time. So it's a hard time where people don't have the compassion that necessarily is needed to get through something like this in a political way. So, but I think as long as people are dedicated and they have good intentions, that and they put the like the end goal of saving lives, and they say, well, this is like, as long as you have the intention that saving lives is what the end goal is here, and that you'll work with anyone of any political stripe at any time, try and meet those like to save lives in a meaningful way. Educating is really important. It's hard when sometimes you become at your wit's end trying to explain, trying to explain what's going on and what needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, even in the span of this discussion, we've heard so many different pieces in which something needs to be done, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to educate us. Like honestly, like we had a conversation before this one that we're having live right now, and I'm still continuing to learn more from you. Um,
That's good. I'm glad.
yeah, I want to say I have more follow-up questions based on what we've
Yeah.
already talked about, but I want to really empower the audience. You know, many of the
Yeah.
people who said kind words when we began this event,
Yeah.
August, Michelle, Emily, please feel free to throw in some more questions for Sarah while we have her.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I guess my third follow-up question from before was you know, as you answer these questions that people have about the solutions that are being proposed, that keep thinking about the problem of drug use or addiction in or the opioid crisis in Canada, you keep bringing it back to what people need, right? And I think that even for I guess I want to phrase this as a question so that I'm not the one talking. Do you think that even for those who are supportive of making progress on this issue, there is still a tendency to overlook the people who are most affected by this crisis?
Yeah. I mean, I think that drug users don't have enough of a voice and for themselves, for sure. And I think if you were, the ones that I speak to, people that I speak to that are drug users, they would like to take something that's not going to kill them too. I think that would be a very, a big start for them. What more was your question? But yeah, I
mean, I think the question is like, it is. The question was, do people who support this issue moving forward, do they still also like overlook drug users as like the people who are most they don't people I like do people who are on the left and support decrim and support medication assisted treatment and support safer drug supply, do they have trouble thinking about things that you do, like providing hairdressing, providing dog food for their pets, providing housing?
I don't know, like, I feel like we're in a good position because we're a nonprofit and that we're able to be a bit more nimble in grassroots. And I'm like I come from I've had my own issues in my life, but I was also like a park board commissioner, which is elected with the mayor and council, and so that I learned a lot about how to do public consultation. That's all we really did on all kinds of stuff. And I think that really and communications, but it really taught me a lot about how to come to consensus. And I think that I don't know if this is really getting to your question, but I think it's helped. It helps having someone that's in a management position that knows and understands what it's like to be a drug user. Also having a family member that was homeless in the past. My father was homeless, so like I get it on a personal level, and I understand some of the pain that goes with it, and I feel comfortable, and I think that really it comes down to like some of it's just personal, real empathy that comes from real lived experience of like traumatic situations and pain.
Yeah. I think that does.
And I don't really think you can really, I mean, you can try your best, but it's really, and I see really compassionate and empathetic people who haven't been through a lot in their lives, and they want to understand, and they really work hard to understand, and they do, and they you know, we have lots of volunteers that are really kind and compassionate, and usually the ones that are doing it for, you know, a good reason, or because they want to really truly understand, stick around, and they become part of the family too, and then, you know, but I think it does come from a place of like community, grassroots community building, and what are we going to do together to make, you know, all of our lives better, and let's not have, you know, a lot of rules here. Let's just make it like a comfortable place for people to feel comfortable that don't really feel comfortable anywhere else.
Yeah,
So,
that perfectly answers my question, Sarah, because it's, you know, the thing that you espouse is that to understand the experiences and the needs of people who are in these positions, we simply have to listen and work to understand. And in reflected in the work that you describe, I see an expression of solidarity with people who don't have a lot of power in our society, who don't have a lot of voice. And I guess my follow-up question to that is, what can people do if they are working to hear these voices, if they're working to try and understand? What should they do with that understanding? How can they reach that understanding? How can we bridge this over this crisis?
You know, there's drug user groups and homeless people in every community. I mean, you can go to your Christmas dinner and talk to people about it. You can and create better understanding of, you know, through watching this film, and you know, understanding that people are people, and that we all could be a crisis away from our mental health or a pain. You know, people, a lot of people are construction workers that, you know, get injured and then they start using drugs. And I mean, even like a romance breakup, you know, a lot of people end up using drugs because of that. I mean, you would be surprised, or not surprised, because we know how painful some things in life are. And sometimes when you've had not really a lot of ways to deal with that pain growing up, I think it doesn't give you the ability to handle things as much as others. So I think if you can, you know, have empathy that not everybody has it as easy as other people, and that you know, some people have pain, or they've got mental health issues that I mean, schizophrenia, you can't always medicate it with anything. Like some medications just don't, some people don't have, there's no medication that's going to help them. And something like fentanyl is going to take away some of those, you know, the difficulty of living. So I think, I mean, it's like to judge a person in some of these situations is just, it's wrong, really. And when we see someone who's homeless, so I'm hoping, or, you know, or drug users groups, you can always, if you hear about them, you can bring them some coffee or support them, you know, write a letter and say, you know what, these guys are trying to do good work here, and just get out there and help as much as you can. You know, just in your, just have, like, try to develop more empathy for things you don't necessarily have to completely understand.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer, Sarah. And in fact, you know, after one of these screenings that Story Money Impact posted, there was someone who wrote in and said, you know, there is a neighborhood in my town that I used to walk through and I would feel unsafe because of these prejudices I had. And now when I walk through, I try to think about how glad I am that these people are outside and get to enjoy this public space in the way that public spaces should be used by the people who live in them. And I found that really beautiful. I also really want to underscore what you said about supporting, you know, communities in the area that you are in directly via, writing a letter to, perhaps someone in a position of power over that community, or to just support supervised consumption services that are in Edmonton. I know a lot of our viewers are from Edmonton, including there is a supervised consumption center called the George Spady Center. When they're in need of support, they'll need your solidarity, as Sarah has expressed.
Bring them some coffee, go and meet them, they're, I'm sure like all the safe injection sites that I've been to have like a personality, and they are saving lives, and they are dealing with a very difficult situation right now. And having compassion for human beings is really a basis on a better humanity. If you can instead of looking at someone and saying, just dismissing them or stigmatizing them, looking at them and wishing for them to have the life that they deserve and the life that they want.
Yeah. And no, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basis of it, is that, I think like in this day and age, I feel like people are losing sight of it was just wishing for people that are homeless or having some struggles, a better life, and compassionately caring, and that goes a long way for your own self. And instead of putting negative stigma, like where you have to do this or that, or just get yourself together, which you just don't really understand what people have gone through. And to try and, it's better for your own soul to be like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's better for you to see things that way, as opposed to seeing things in a judgmental way. It's not good for you to do that for your own self.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. And I think we're also all better off that you have a soul like yours as well. And I want to ask you, Sarah, like when you're having a hard day or a tough day at OPS and you still got to make it to the end of your shift, what brightens your day? Like if someone were to want to come in and bring you something or say something to you or express solidarity with the work that you do.
Oh yeah. I mean, people pop in and they bring coffee for people, or they bring sandwiches or chocolates, and they just tell people like, hey man, you guys are doing a great job. Thanks for saving lives, and thanks for being compassionate and caring and providing a compassionate, caring space in a world that's so stigmatizing. And you don't have to necessarily say that, but I mean, I had a friend of mine pop in and say, hey, I popped in, I was in a suit, and everybody was so sweet and kind, and I brought over a bunch of sandwiches, and everybody was so nice. And sometimes people don't realize how nice people are, or how friendly people will be, and how grateful people are to be cared for. And so if we all cared just a little bit, it goes a long way, right? And that's if we can all just put a little bit of compassion together. You don't have to do volunteering all day, but just saying something nice to someone. Like if you see a homeless person sweeping up on the street, or you see someone doing something good, or noticing what people are doing, or like acknowledging the homeless person on the street and asking if they're having a good day, like you would any other person, is really it goes a long way, I think, in just making people feel seen and and human.
I really appreciate that basic building block that you keep bringing us to. I think it's so important, and I think it is sadly something that's in dire need, that basic building block of compassion and kindness for those who really need it the most. And I'm very, heartened to say at the end of our discussion that there are huge thanks in this chat for you, Sarah. A thank you for answering my questions and paving the path forward in your community, Sarah. Huge thanks to you for this conversation. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. You really brought light to this topic and how we can resolve this crisis. And another person who says, I just want to say thank you for all you do to help everyone. We could all do
Thanks,
more
guys.
in the community, and you're a positive example. This film and conversation is very inspiring and motivating. And from me, Sarah, at Story Money Impact, and the work that we've done with this film and Gima Bibitson, The Meaning of Empathy, I do want to say thank you for your compassion, and thank you for your kindness and the work that you do, and thank you for saving all the lives that you've helped saved.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to have this discussion with you and have everyone see this film. And I really hope that you all have a good life, and I hope that we were able to learn something from today. I hope it was helpful in some way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the end of our discussion. Everyone, the John Humphrey Center will be emailing out a link to this film so that you can watch it, or encourage your fellow conference attendees to watch it if they weren't attending today. And of course, the discussion will be uploaded soon. In addition to that, there are going to be calls to action that are linked to in that email, including a survey from Story Money Impact. This survey is so important for us specifically because it helps us continue to get funding to show this film and bring those calls to action and bring people like Sarah, not just to you, but to people who really need to see it in order to push this conversation forward. So I'm really looking forward to bringing Sarah to a screening of educators in the Vancouver and Lower Mainland area in BC who are excited to bring the film to students in BC so that they can learn more about how they can engage with this issue. So please do go to this link here, storymoneyimpact.com/love. It is our survey, and it'll help us both measure how this conversation has helped you and also be able to report back to our funders so that we can keep doing this work. Thank you very much to Sarah, to you, to the John Humphrey Center and the Ignite Change Global Convention, and have a wonderful night. And as Sarah said, have a wonderful life. Good night.